Hey guys, welcome to my kitchen. Today I thought, since I'm going to be doing an entire afternoon of cooking, I would just vlog about it and show you guys how I make some of the healthy things that I make and how I navigate in a kitchen that is not adapted in any way, and point out some of the tips that I have for cooking in a wheelchair. So I defrosted some ground beef and I put some beef bones in the oven because today we are making bone broth because I refuse to buy a broth at the grocery store because it's full of junk and additives and preservatives and like MSG. There's just so much junk. At least here in Canada, it's really hard to get good bone broth at the store. In the States, there's lots more healthier brands, but even then they still, I don't know. I don't like them. So I make my own bone broth from organic grass-fed beef bones that I get from a local farmer. And I do it in my Instant Pot, which you're gonna see. And then while that's cooking, I'm going to make supper for tonight, which is like my version of a shepherd's pie with sweet potato or sweet potato broccoli mash on top. And then the bottom is ground beef, mixed vegetables. And I'm just gonna use like a homemade barbecue sauce because that was what's in the freezer that needs to get eaten up. Normally I would use like a homemade ketchup and beef broth, but that's not what I'm using today. And then I'm gonna make a pea salad because I have some leftover peas in the fridge that I need to make. And then I'm gonna make some sugar cookies for Christmas. So that's what I'm doing, and you guys can just follow me along as I do it, and I'll point out some stuff that I think is helpful. So first things first, I'm gonna move the camera wide angle so that you can see what I'm doing, because I have one plug-in in my kitchen, and the Instant Pot has like a very short cord, and normally people would put it on a counter, like an island counter like this. But I hate that because I can't see in it, and I really still can't see in it when I put it on the table, but I prefer it being on the table. I can just access it better. So I'm gonna move my whole table over to the plug-in. So that's what I'm gonna do now. Move you guys around. And if anybody is a cameraman out there and wants to come live with me so that I don't have to film myself because it's impossible when you're in a wheelchair, let me know. You can come stay at my house and I'll feed you and you can just film my whole life for me. Okay, so the plug-in that I need is right there, and my table is right there. So I'm gonna drag my table over to the plug-in. I always cook not always actually, I usually cook the beef bones a little bit because they're better if they're like roasted a little bit for flavor before you cook them in the Instant Pot to make the bone broth. So I'm just gonna get those out of the oven. Normally I put the oven door all the way down. Sometimes I don't, sometimes I leave it up like this, but that's probably not smart because then you can like burn your arm a little bit as it's coming out. But I always access my oven from the outside, which I need like a big area on the other side of the oven so that I can get the door down and have my wheelchair there. I know some people, is this even recording? Yes. I know some people can access it from this side if they put it down like this and grab stuff out like this. But I don't have that great of balance, so I prefer to access the oven where I can be holding on with one hand and grabbing whatever it is so that I don't fall over. If I'm, picking up something heavy from the front, then I could potentially fall over forward. So I always access the oven sideways like this just because I feel safer. So I guess that's tip number one. I'm not really gonna count because you guys know I can't keep track of anything when I count. I like was on 9 and then 14 2 videos ago when I did my things for Christmas. So I'm just not gonna count. I guess my next tip is coming right now because I'm going to grab my cutting board that I use to cut up, that I'll be using to cut up all the vegetables to put in the bone broth. I use a really thick, heavy wooden cutting board that my husband made for me, but you can get any kind of wooden cutting board basically anywhere, Amazon, whatever home store you prefer. And I use a wooden cutting board because I like to be able to cut on my lap. I like to be able to put hot things on my lap. I know that's probably not like the best thing to be recommending to people, but it's just something I do, and I'm being totally honest with you guys. I use a wooden cutting board that's really thick, so if I take something hot off the stove, if I want to like mix macaroni or something like that without leaning up onto the counter, I'll put it down on my lap on the cutting board and mix it really quick. It's not sitting there forever, and the cutting board is super thick and it's wood, so the heat isn't going to penetrate to my legs. I have burnt my legs before when I didn't have a cutting board on, and I tried using like an oven mitt and stuff like that. So I don't recommend that because cloth does conduct heat a lot faster than wood, but wood is pretty good at not conducting the heat. So I think you're pretty safe if you put something hot on your lap for just a minute, as long as your entire lap is covered and there's no holes or anything. That's another reason I really recommend a wooden cutting board, because plastic, it does conduct heat a lot faster than wood, and it melts, which not good. And glass totally conducts heat way faster, and that can break, all kinds of stuff. So wooden cutting board, just get yourself a wooden cutting board that completely covers your lap. Make sure your lap is even. If your lap isn't even like mine is, just when I'm sitting in my chair, then you can put a tea towel or something underneath the part of your lap that isn't even, just to even it out. So cutting, we're gonna cut up some onions and carrots and celery and put those in the bone broth, because what goes in bone broth is vegetables, the meat, and some spices, whatever you want in the bone broth, and then it cooks in the Instant Pot for about an hour, no, about 2 hours, yeah, two hours, and then it's bone broth, and it's super tasty, and you can use it in your cooking. One of the ways that I utilize a kitchen that isn't modified is to maximize my storage space that's reachable. For years I couldn't get in my pantry because my wheelchair was too wide and the pantry door was too skinny. So I could just get like the front of my wheelchair into the pantry and reach the bottom shelves, which was super annoying, and I couldn't get lots of stuff in there because I couldn't reach the top shelves, and so it all had to be light stuff that I could get with my reacher, or that I could reach with my hand and it wouldn't spill, any of that stuff. And so I got this cabinet that is just in a corner of my kitchen that I can use for all of my spices, anything that's like little and tedious that I don't want to spill or that I need to access all the time. I put in this cabinet, and then the bigger stuff like the cereal boxes, things like that I don't have to access as much, that my kids are going to be getting, or that, you know, just isn't used as often, I'll put in the bigger pantry. I can get in the pantry now because I have a smaller wheelchair. My new wheelchair is just skinny enough to get in there. I was like, hallelujah, when I found out I could get in there, and I didn't even mean to when I ordered my chair. I just realized it after the fact, and it was like amazing. I was so happy when I realized I could get in there. So lower spaces. And while we're on that note, I'll show you the drawers that my husband put into, because there was no drawers in this entire kitchen on the lower level. It was just cabinets with shelves. And so that made getting stuff out of it really hard, because I had to be able to like bend over and look what was inside. And so my husband built these drawers on the lower levels for me so that I can get all of this stuff. And basically everything is down low. In the island, they have drawers exactly like this. And it has all of my cups and everything in it. It has cups on the top, it has plates on the bottom, and it has my casserole dishes, like my bowls for mixing and everything like that. Everything in one big island so that I can reach everything, which is so nice. The drawers made this kitchen way more usable. And then in the upper cupboards, I basically have nothing. I don't really have that many upper cupboards. Like I only have, I'll show you, those two, the ones above the microwave, and then I guess would be a spice cupboard over by the stove, and then one more upper cupboard over there by the window. That's it. That's the entire upper cupboards in my house, which I don't care because I don't use them ever. So I really don't have that much cupboard space in my kitchen at all, but I don't care about the top spaces. I just maximize the lower storage where I can. And so it's one of the tips that I would suggest if you have a kitchen, make sure there's drawer space in the lower cupboards, because drawers are just way easier to use in a wheelchair. So that's another tip. I'm not numbering them because I don't know where the hell I am. Tips for cooking on the stove. So one of the things that's super important to me, one of the things that's really important to me in my kitchen, and I didn't even mean to do it, it came with the house, is that the stove is really close to the sink. That is like huge for me, because I can't bring anything from the stove to an island sink very easily because I don't have strong stomach muscles and I can't lift it down onto my lap that well. I used to, in an apartment building, have my sink and my stove opposite each other, and I was lifting spaghetti across my lap, but it got heavy and I tilted it a little bit and the water poured on my leg and I burnt myself so bad. So now I always have a stove that is close to my sink, so that I can just drag it and dump, which I'll show you when I drain the sweet potatoes. But that is like, it's hugely important. The other thing that I like is having my elbow be able to rest in a place that I'm cooking and stirring so that I can balance. And I can balance when I go to reach the stove knobs. I don't use this side very often because I have to reach over the pot or the pan or whatever it is here to get to the knobs, which I hate. So I use the side most often that I can get sort of farther back from and then reach the knobs. So sink and stove close together so that you can drag it and dump, and then a counter that's beside the stove so that you can, whichever is your dominant side, so that you can balance. My mom doesn't have any counter on this side of her stove, and I hate cooking at her house because I can't balance on anything. Like, her stove is the end of the cupboard, it's just there by itself, and it's really hard to cook on when you don't have balance. So that's another huge tip that I think is important for safety. So yeah, get a sink by your stove. Okay, I'm going to get all the stuff I need and make the shepherd's pie. As you can see, I'm breaking up the ground beef and I have my arm resting on the countertop. So it just makes it easier for me to balance without, my face falling into a hot pan. So that's why I love having a countertop right beside the stove. In the ground beef is gonna go onion and mixed vegetables, which I have on the table, and barbecue sauce. Another thing with a cutting board that's super important is a juice groove. So there's a juice groove in this one. It's actually not deep enough. I'm gonna get my husband to cut a deeper juice groove because there's nothing more annoying than when you're cutting something and the juice runs either this way on my lap or down onto the floor. It's like cutting a tomato or a watermelon or something that's really juicy. It's important to have something that can catch that. A lot of times I'll put like a piece of paper towel on the side that the juice is running so that it doesn't go on the ground or on my clothes. So I have the pot on my lap and it's not crazy heavy, so I can lift it with one hand onto the counter. And then normally I turn the tap on and then fill it up, either going like this and holding both arms as like leverage kind of on the edges of the sink and then lift it back out. Or I have a pot filler thing that I can move over. So I'll show you guys how to do it if I didn't have this pot holder or this pot filler thing. So it's about halfway full, and then once it's full, I just move it onto the edge of the counter, and then I drag it. And if the pot is way too heavy, then I'll slide it. So I'll move this pan over, slide it onto the stove and back into the corner, and just be careful not to burn myself. If the pot isn't crazy heavy, then I will lift it like this and put it over there. Either way works, just depending on how heavy the pot is. This side, I make sure to turn the burner on, obviously before it's hot. Of course you turn a burner on before it's hot. It doesn't get hot until you turn it on. I turn the burner on by leaning over and make sure that this element, that's what it's called, this element isn't on. So I reach over and turn it on high. And then if I have to turn that burner down, I will move in front of the stove and reach diagonally back. Time to add the mixed vegetables to the ground beef and add the barbecue sauce. You'll notice I'm not measuring anything because I don't measure anything. I just cook what I want until it looks the way I think it should. So this is a heavy bag. So again, rest my elbow on this side and I'd say that's probably 2 cups of vegetables. First thing we need to do to make the salad is make the mayo for the dressing. And to do that, I add a whole egg, 1 whole egg, not just the yolk. So make sure not to break the yolk. So I always like tip it sideways so that the yolk goes in without breaking. Then we need a little bit of acid for the mayo. About a tablespoon. Apple cider vinegar is what I'm using. 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Dijon mustard. Depending on how much you like. I like quite a bit. And then I like tiny bit of sweetness, so I add a little bit of maple syrup. And then oil. The oil, avocado oil, pure avocado oil. And my immersion blender. This is what it looks like. So add about 3/4 of a cup of oil. I just estimate when it looks like 3/4 of a cup. It's about 3/4 of a cup. This is the easiest way to make mayo. I've tried it a million times in like the blender and you know, where you pour the oil super slowly. Never works for me, but this always works. So then you put your immersion blender in the very bottom. Make sure it's on the bottom, and then you go. There you have it. So that's homemade mayo, which is pretty much the dressing because I add the sweetness and the mustard already to the mayo mix. So this is basically the dressing for the salad. And then we just have to mix the ham and the onions and the feta cheese in with the peas and then put it in the fridge. The sweet potato broccoli mixture is done. So now I need to drain it. So I'm gonna reach over. So I make sure that my hand it looks like it's really close, but it's not. I turn it off and then put the lid back on. And then I drag it because it's hot and I can't lift it. So I go towards the sink, I lift up on the lip, and then I drag it. My countertops are laminate or something, I think, which you're not supposed to put heat on, but I do anyway because it's safer than not dragging it, and I've never had any issues. So if you're worried about your countertops, you might want to put like a tea towel or something underneath it. Now that I have my pot on the edge of the sink, normally what I would do is if there's like vegetables or something that I'm draining, I take something that allows me to grab the hot lid. So in this case, a wet rag, and I hold it, and then I kind of get it on the edge against the lip so that it's kind of stuck there, and I just start tipping it. I turn the pot so that I can hold the lid this way. I turn it until the water starts coming out, and I just sort of lift the lid off a little bit until all the water comes out. If you can't do it that way, you could also use a colander. So I have the colander. Make a spot right in the corner of the sink, and then I take the lid off, set it on the counter, and then I just tip until all the contents start falling into the colander. Sort of keep it on the edge. So I do it one-handed that way. And then to get the contents back in, I just use my elbow on the edge and then tip like that. So typically I do what I did with the lid if there's something to drain that I don't want to dump all the way into the colander, but I do drain spaghetti like that by just tipping, and sometimes I even tip with this hand, just this way into the colander. And then to mash, I always set the pot in the sink so that I can see it. Okay, so now we just have to put it all in a casserole dish. So I have this casserole dish, and I'm going to set it on my lap on the cutting board, which, I don't know, you can decide if that's safe, but I've never burnt myself, and the cutting board is really thick, so I feel safe, and the casserole dish is completely on the cutting board, so not anywhere near any of my skin or my clothes or anything. So casserole dish. Now I'm going to lift it back up onto the stove. Again, elbow for leverage, elbow on my other wheel, and big lift. It's pretty heavy. I don't even know if I'll be able to get it in the oven. It's so heavy. We'll see. A tip for that is if you make something that you know is going to be heavy, then put it in two things that you know you can lift. Because sometimes, like, this might have gotten too heavy for me to even lift, which then I'll have to wait till somebody gets home to put it in the oven, but we'll see. I'll try and get it in there. Going down into the oven is easier than going up because I know that I'm putting it on something. Oh, got it down. Won't probably get it back up, so have to wait till somebody gets home. The one cupboard that it has stuff in it that I need that's up high is my jar cupboard. Is my jar cupboard. It's up there. It has all my jars. So I have to try and get the jars down by myself, which is annoying. But I can mostly reach this cupboard, this level of the cupboard. So as long as I can get the jars to the edge of the cupboard, then I'm usually good. Okay. So that should be enough jars for all of the bone broth that I have. And then because I can't lift the thing out of the Instant Pot, I have to basically ladle the bone broth. I have to ladle all the bones, or I have to get all the bones out with, I use one of these as like a big scoop to get all the bones out into a big bowl, and then I use another big bowl to ladle all the bone broth in, and then once I strain it, then I ladle it into jars. So that's what I'm gonna do now. And then my family should be home and we can eat supper and make the cookies. Okay, so this last part of the video doesn't really have any kitchen tips. So if you want to hang out with us and make some cookies, then you can stay for the rest of my vlog. If you're only interested in the kitchen tips and the cooking tips, then you can stay if you want, but you don't have to. Other than I'm gonna show you how I use a rolling pin, which is maybe a little different without tummy muscles. So if you want to see that, then stick around. So I'll recap the tips just in case you do want to leave and you have things to do. So cutting board, always have a wooden cutting board, and not plastic, not glass, wooden, so that you can safely put warm things on your lap, probably not safe for me to recommend that, but I do it and I've never burnt myself. So wooden cutting board, always on your lap so that it's even and you can put hot things on your lap. Having the sink close to the stove so that you can drag hot pots and dump them out, dump the hot water or whatever, fill them up and then drag them back to the stove. Having drawers in all of the lower cupboards so that you can maximize the space and you can use them easier. Having nothing in front of the oven so that you don't have to lean forward sort of in the corner in order to get things out. Really, those are my tips. I don't know if there's anything, profound in any of that, but that's what I do. So if you want to stick around and make cookies, then stick around. We're going to make Christmas cookies.
Why does vanilla smell so good?
Okay guys, this vlog's done. My kids are getting grumpy. They've been grumpy since after school and they've just humored me. So we're gonna go, we're gonna clean up and we're gonna get ready for bed. Today's been a super long day, but I hope this video was helpful, just showing you guys what I do in the kitchen and giving you some tips about how to navigate an unmodified kitchen in a wheelchair. I don't know if it was helpful, I hope it was, and if you did find it helpful, then give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment about something that you either thought was great that I suggested, or if there's something else that you're like, hey, this is awesome, I'd love to know it. So leave that in the comments too. If you want to sign up for my email list, I'll leave a link for that in the description below. And as always, guys, I will catch you back here next Monday. See ya. Bye, guys.